Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to this Campus by Karger webinar on innovations in peer review. My name is Francesca Brazzarotto, and I'm the organizer of this event and part of the team here at Karger. And I'm really, really happy to see many of you joining us today from across the research community. So before we dive into the discussion today, just a few quick housekeeping notes. This session is being recorded and the link will be shared with everyone who's registered, so you can rewatch or catch up if needed. And as a thank you for registering, you also get free access for 1 month to our 3 peer review courses designed to support researchers at every stage of their reviewing journey. You receive the dedicated access link via email after the event. And then finally, this is an interactive session. So throughout the discussion, we'll be launching a few short polls to hear your opinions. You're also very welcome to submit your question using the Q&A box or the chat at any time. You're also welcome to use the reaction emojis because we love to see them. Now, I'm very pleased to introduce our moderator for today, my colleague, Dr. Teresa Matthews. Teresa was awarded her PhD in entomology by the Federal University of Viçosa, Minas Gerais in Brazil, and has been a publication manager with Karger's editorial development team since 2019. She oversees several journals in the neurology and neurosciences portfolio and also serves as Karger's liaison for researcher engagement and recognition. Teresa co-leads our internal task force focused on valuing outstanding research, peer reviewers, and editorial leadership. And I can't think of a better person to guide us in this conversation today. Joining Teresa on the panel, there are two fantastic speakers. We have Professor Lutz Breckelt, a full professor of software engineering at Freie Universität Berlin, where he also serves as executive director of the Institute for Informatics. He has a long-standing interest in the human factors of the research and development process, with work spanning empirical methods, research culture, and systemic quality. He's the founder of the Software Engineering Research Quality Coalition and inventor of the Review Quality Collector, or RQC, which we'll hear more about today as well. And we're also joined by Dr. Gareth Dyke. I'm sure you've seen him around. He has a big following, also social media. He's the academic director at Reviewer Credits. Gareth is a prolific researcher with more than 350 peer-reviewed publications in paleontology. He's worked with a range of companies supporting researchers through the publication process, including as content director at Research Square, and now leads the academic engagement and business development at Reviewer Credits and For Evolution. So we're really looking forward to a lively and practical conversation. So with that, I'll hand it over to Teresa to get us started. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much, Fran, for the introduction, and thank you, Gareth and Lutz, for taking part of this webinar with this so interesting topic. And well, before we start the discussion, I would love to get a quick understanding of who is in the room and of their experience with peer review, whether as an author, reviewer, editor, both, or neither. So if we could just put on the poll, Francesca. So the poll is, what is your experience with peer review? And we have 4 options. I have reviewed articles for journals. I've had my work peer reviewed, but never reviewed it myself. I've both reviewed and been reviewed, and I've never been involved in peer review. So let's just get a few seconds in to see the answers coming in. So far, the majority are saying that they have both peer reviewed and have been reviewed. Tied in second place, they have reviewed articles for journals and or have not been involved in peer review whatsoever. And then in third place, we have I've had my work peer reviewed, but never reviewed myself. So I think that's enough time. Yeah. So yeah, so we can see that the majority of the people in the audience have then peer reviewed or have reviewed, and then in second place, people have already also experienced either being peer reviewed or reviewed for journals in their professional life. So thank you so much for sharing this. And then we have we would like then to start the stage. As you know, peer review is often called as a cornerstone for scientific publishing, but it's far from perfect. So it's great that we are here discussing today how we can improve the experience in all sides. So to kick things off, I would like to ask both of you, Garrett and Lutz, from your perspective, what you see as the biggest issues facing peer review. And maybe we could start with Garrett, who's as someone who has published extensively and served as an editor. What's it do you see as the biggest challenges in peer review process today, Garrett?
Well, wow. Well, thank you so much, first of all, for the opportunity to be on this panel and participate today. And it's great to meet you, Teresa, and great to meet you as well, Professor Lutz. For me, from both sides of the fence, if you like, at Reviewer Credits, we deal with both researchers who are registering with us to perform peer review, but also with journals and publishers. I mean, to start with, for researchers, there are many problems with peer review, as we'll get into in this discussion, and many great things about peer review, but many issues as well. I would put my finger on the number one issue, though, being for researchers, like a general lack of recognition, like within their institutions, I would say, within the kind of research community. Like if I perform peer review for a journal, for a publisher, that's going to take a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of expertise, and I don't get recognition for that, really, either from publishers or from my institution. That's the biggest problem. Like after, many years working in different universities and institutions, like doing many peer reviews, that was never something that I could put on my internal assessments as an academic. It was never something that my university kind of took into account. I'm sure that Lutz will talk to this in a moment. So for researchers, performing peer review, I think that's the biggest issue. For journals and publishers, on the other hand, the gatekeepers of the research scholarly record, if you will, the biggest issue that we encounter talking to publishers and journals is finding good peer reviewers. And that's really getting a lot worse in the last few years. There's lots more papers getting published. There's this reviewer fatigue, if you like. So finding good reviewers who are able, prepared to spend the time to do a good job to assess research. So those would be my kind of splitting the kind of question in half. Those would be my answers, Teresa.
Teresa,
Oh,
you're
you're muted.
muted.
Sorry, and then I try to unmute myself multiple times. Thank you so much for sharing, Garrett. And yeah, definitely, this is something that we have been struggling with, and it's a global phenomenon that it's so hard to find peer reviews. And I have to say that at Karger, we are continually trying to improve peer reviewers' experience so that they are more keen in collaborating with our journals throughout the process. But Lutz, I would like to hear from you, from your academic and systems thinking background. What systemic issues in peer review have persisted over time, and why do you think they remain unresolved? What is holding us back to finally get things flowing in a better way for both the peer review process and for peer reviewers in general?
Yeah. So I fully agree with Gareth's assessment, except that I don't think it's a split, really, because I think that editors are having such a hard time finding reviewers has a lot to do with the fact that reviewing doesn't get recognition. as of today. Is if it would, so my perspective is good reviewing ought to be a source of reputation, just like good publishing is. It should be visible and it should count, because for the scientific process, it's very important that people do this and do it well. And I think even the third party that complains about reviewing, the authors, who say, well, many reviews just aren't good. They aren't thoughtful. They aren't careful. They are just a nuisance. That is also the same problem, because reviewers just don't spend enough time to get the judgment of the paper right, because there is no incentive for them to do so. They want to get back to their publishing work, which gets them recognition. And from a systemic standpoint, so I find you mentioned this review quality collector system, which is addressing exactly this point. It's trying to turn reviewing into a source of reputation. And when I talk to people, editors and universities alike, what I find is a great deal of conservatism. So they are stuck in some position. They have lots to do, lots of problems. They can't think really about a new thing if that new thing requires any kind of effort, which it does. Yeah. So to introduce a mechanism that turns reviewing into a source of reputation isn't something that is just the turn of a knob. Some human work is involved, and that I think is really hard to get.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I always wondered why there is so few incentives from institutions in recognizing this part of the academic production, one could say, and also part of training the next generation of researchers, right? Like you will never get out of a lab without helping out in peer review, and you cannot form yourself as a researcher and as a future author without having being able to critically appraise a scientific article, right? And now I would like for us to look at these challenges and look ahead and check on the new models and formats of peer review, how these have been gaining attention, and that there are some promising, there are some that are promising more transparency, speed, and collaboration. Also, something that it's very inherent into publishing nowadays. Speed of publication is something that is very important both to authors and to the institutions, that they want to see as well the return for their investments coming out as quickly as possible, right? It's not only that the authors feel like, oh, I really need to have this out. The institutions are also putting a pressure on the researchers because they have to account for whatever they have spent on those research projects within a yearly time frame. And then I wanted to launch a poll that we will check on how the audience here perceive these things. And so the polls allow for more than one choice, so please choose all that apply. And the question is which alternative peer review model would you prefer to experience for your next paper, either as author or reviewer? Open peer review, so where the identities and the comments would be published alongside the papers. Post-publication peer review, which is more community driven. Collaborative peer review, so tools that would allow the reviewers looking on the possibility of publishing a manuscript to work together and to see live feedback from one another. And or if you would prefer to stick to the traditional peer review model, or if there is something else, and please feel free to explain that in the chat for everybody. Let me just have a look. And the answers are coming in. It gives a few more seconds so people can answer. My explanation of the poll was a bit long. So I'm seeing a tie between preferring the traditional mode and collaborative peer review, followed by open peer review. That's surprising to me. And then post-publication peer review coming afterwards, and something else, but I don't see any explanation in the chat. So this chat does not seem enabled. Maybe Francesca can help us with this. So yeah, so the feature that people are most looking at is collaborative peer review. So thank you so much for sharing this. It's really interesting to see where the group stands on this. And so going into more deep into the topic, I wanted to ask our participants, panelists, what are the most promising innovations in peer review, and how they compare to traditional models? So maybe Garrett, you've worked across many journals and research communities, and are you seeing increased demands for these newer peer review models, or do journals mostly respond to market pressures? Do you see there is a inherent movement coming from publishers to give a peer review a different spin, or do you feel that it goes if there is any pressure from the community?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting point, and it's interesting to see that our participants today are going like half and half for collaborative peer review and the traditional models. Like in my experience, generally people say that they would be keen on open peer review or collaborative peer review, but actually when it comes down to it, when they've got a paper in the system, what they care about most of all is getting the paper through the system as quickly as possible, getting it published as quickly as possible, and getting it into a good journal as quickly as possible. So, I mean, that being said, like we do see huge variation depending upon subject area and geographical regions in responses that researchers would make to these kinds of questions. I mean, for example, there are lots of people who would feel that double-blind peer review is fairer for them if they feel that they might be discriminated against, or their institution or their country of origin might be discriminated against somehow in the peer review process. And I just like remember like when I was invited to review for, quite high impact, factor journals, like I don't want to do that in an open way if I'm going to be critical about the paper. Like in a small field like my field, paleontology, like if it's all well and good to be open and collaborative and make comments on the papers of peers and maybe more senior researchers, but if you're going to be a little bit negative, then that could have an adverse career effect. So generally speaking, I think most people would like go for speed and would be quite happy with traditional closed or single blind peer review, so long as it's done quickly and effectively and their papers get published fast. We see some innovative approaches, like Research Hub is one company where researchers are being rewarded for their open peer review with Research Coin, for example. But at the moment, I don't see these alternative approaches gaining a great deal of traction. But maybe I'm not correct.
Yeah, thank you, Garrett. Indeed, this isn't the first time, and I believe that it's not also not going to be the last time that I hear from a researcher telling me how cool it would be that we would have open peer review everywhere, where one would also be able to not only know who has contributed to improve a manuscript, and that would definitely award this person due recognition for their input, right? Their energy and what they have put into helping the authors to get to a better article to be published, but that they feel that their position would be threatened by opening this information out for everyone, especially if that paper is authored by someone who could be determining their further steps in their careers, right? So it's a director of their institution and so on.
Well, we know from surveys that have been conducted that about 50-50 people will choose open peer review if they're given the choice. I mean, so it's very much a kind of flip of a coin thing. I mean, so not yet gaining the traction that lots of our friends in the open science community would like to have us believe, I would say.
Yeah, and maybe that's also something like seeing the split. And I wanted to check with Lutz, from your experience and your perspective, do you feel that these alternative models they could um, um, be addressing issues like trust and bias and any research integrity from a systemic standpoint? Is this something that you could share something about, Lutz?
So I see a lot of open reviewing and collaborative reviewing in my own work because I sign my reviews. So there's no open reviewing in general where I work, but I do it. And for me, well, I am a tenured professor. Nobody can hurt me really badly. I can stand that. It works. And the reason why I do it is that it keeps me honest. It makes sure I do my due diligence before I say something critical. I have looked real sharp if that's really true. And because I want to do proper quality work, I think signing is the right thing to do for me. In terms of the system, I would love to see that happen more because when I look at the reviews my colleagues are doing, I think very many of them would become much better if people would have to sign their names on them. And even if it were, yeah, so if they were published, I think many people wouldn't do the embarrassing things they are doing in the closed. For collaborative, so I would love to see that happen more. For collaborative reviewing, I am not so optimistic. I work in software engineering and in computer science in general. Much of the high quality publishing is happening at conferences. And at conferences, it is the norm that after the reviewing period, say 4 weeks, where you had your bunch of papers, 3 or 5 or something, there is a discussion period where the reviewers are encouraged to look at the other reviews, comment on them, and then maybe change their point of view and correct and augment their reviews. And my reviews tend to be long and detailed. So I find stuff that my co-reviewers have overlooked. And when I point them out and say, have you looked at this issue? What happens most of the time is nothing. Yeah, they more or less don't react. So I like the system in principle. It's a wonderful format. Because if 3 people would really get together and discuss, you could get really high quality decisions. But it doesn't happen because again, it's the incentive thing. Yeah, people don't spend the time and the care that would be required, and therefore the idea collapses. The collaboration is an empty thing, and it doesn't help, unfortunately.
I could also expect that this format would also incur in more time, right? Like if one gives a feedback and then you have to wait until the other person also gives their, and then when people have a chance to look at each other's comments and then probably come back and comment on each other's until there is a sort of a consensus, or at least uh, you come to a point where you can group that feedback in
Yeah,
one
yeah.
before you pass that
But
on to the authors.
on
So it
on
would
the other
demand
hand,
from the community to be more patient, right? And change
on
the
the other
pace
hand,
of
in yeah,
publishing a manuscript.
but in principle, you could sort of share the work and say, if we worked truly collaboratively, we wouldn't need all to find all the things. It would be sufficient if the union of our reviews had all the important things, and then we sort it out.
Mhm.
So I think this would balance out. It need not be something more expensive if there was true collaboration, but this simply isn't the reality that I'm seeing, at least in my field.
Gareth, you mentioned that paleontology is a smaller field, and do you feel that there is a different differentiation by the different areas in accepting and also in their capacity of observing these new ways of peer review?
I do, yeah. I think that and Lutz may disagree, but certainly like some fields like physics, computer science, mathematics, like these areas, at least in my understanding and experience, have always been much more collaborative in the way that research is assessed. I mean, pure mathematics, for example, springs to mind. Physics has always been a field where preprint platforms and open peer review have been very much the norm, like since decades. I mean, my field, like some humanities disciplines, like art history, for example, very dependent on individual physical things, like archaeology is as well. Like you dig up something, you find something, you describe it. Like so what you have access to as a researcher, you may not necessarily want to share yet with other researchers until the work is published. And so for that reason, like there would be resistance to open peer review, the use of preprint platforms, for example. I mean, it's just a different kind of research area. But I mean, I agree with Lutz. Like, it would be so fantastic if we saw, teams of researchers collaborating to produce great peer reviews. Maybe that will happen, but I'm sure we'll get to this in a minute, because I think that the onus here should be on publishers to be much less protective of their own pools of peer reviewers and allow much more collaboration, like across the industry. But that would require a change in a lot of mindsets from publishers, I would argue, Teresa.
Yeah, yeah. I just wanted to point out there is a question on the topic, and it's actually aligned with actually I wanted to question you both about regarding, and something that you mentioned, like Professor Lutz Prechelt, he mentioned that he signed his own peer reviews, and that people sometimes they are not comfortable enough about that because they might be punished by doing so if they are indeed peer reviewing something by someone that could make a decision on their academic um, career. And then there is a question from the audience. I don't see the person who has asked the question. So the person said that they would like to point out that the openness would also expose the kind of treatment that they get when they receive a negative review. And I think this is a very important point in someone's journey as an author and as a reviewer as well. So um, the, to help the community to improve the manner in which they share their critiques with one another. right? And how this can what this represents for the forming researcher, right? I remember myself receiving bad reviews on my papers, and on my 24 years of life, it did feel very discouraging. And I was very lucky to have very good uh, professors at that time that were holding my hand and telling me that was not the end of the of the world. But
Yeah.
maybe not everyone is experiencing that. So it's important that one has this in mind and understands the impact of their input to the community and the next generation of researchers.
I must say,
Yeah.
in my ideal world, we would be grown up enough to do open reviewing, and that would mean the powerful person who kills my paper for the wrong reason has just as much to fear as I did, because they will get a backlash at some time as well, because they go on record with what they do. And
Yeah.
it seems to me when I talk to people that we are quite far away from that kind of view, that transparency could help getting rid of so many problems if we would just dare to be really transparent.
And related to that, if I can just jump in, like a part of this competitiveness amongst academics is created by the fact that all journals are not equal. Like, so, in a situation where I have a paper that's have a chance, like I remember one situation when I was doing my postdoc and I got a paper to review for Nature, right? And the two authors or the authors on this Nature paper were both people that I knew in the field. And one of them, like I had the chance to work with, like, you know, in my next postdoc, right? So I declared all of that to the editor at Nature at the time, and he still wanted my opinion on the work, but I was desperate at that point to remain anonymous. Like I did
Mhm.
not want. I mean, I agree with you. That's like, wouldn't it be great to be collaborative? But I did not want the authors on this paper to know that it was me reviewing it because, like, I wasn't going to be. I mean, I wasn't going to be mean or nasty, but I didn't think it was a very good piece of work. So, I, in that situation, like I wanted to, you
Yeah.
know, and I asked the editor at Nature at the time, like, you are not going to tell these guys that this was me, right? Like, and, we used to spend a lot of time as researchers analyzing the way that reviews were written and trying to guess, like, who'd written it. I mean, was it this guy from California because of this kind of spelling or the way that he said things, or was it, this guy from Munich or stuff like that? So, it's a serious concern.
Yes, yes. And I hope that's for what you're relating now, they are not going to find out you review their papers.
Yeah, and in
Yeah.
in the in the ideal world, you would say, well, I think I want to work with you, but if you're not grown up enough to take my criticism, if it's well reasoned and well formulated, well, then maybe I don't want to work with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, but it's that there aren't that many
And
postdoc opportunities in
yeah,
paleontology. You know what I mean?
yeah, I totally agree. Yeah.
Thank you. So, yeah, now that we have explored pros and cons and the practical realities of these possibilities, we would like to hear from the audience thoughts on the future. So, I wanted to launch our next poll, and we are curious to see what the audience thinks. Whether the traditional system will hold strong or if we are heading toward a more open and hybrid future. So, which peer review model do you think will be dominant in 10 years? And here you can only pick one. So, traditional peer review will still dominate. We are not going to change. Maybe we will be able to improve it, but to continue doing as we do. A mix of traditional and open post-publication collaborative peer review. Open or post-publication peer review will become the norm. So we will have a future where everybody will be behaving the best, and we will be able to assess the identity of everyone that has contributed to the publication of a paper. And you think it depends too much on the discipline to say. So maybe we will see that for physics, mathematics, and IT, it will be really going to collaborative and an open peer review. But for other fields which are more specialized and maybe a bit more niche with smaller communities, the traditional peer review would remain. So I took a long time to explain, and a mix of traditional and open post-publication collaborative has 53% of the audience's pick, followed by traditional peer review that will still dominate. And then people believe that it would depend too much on the discipline to say, or open and post-publication peer review will become the norm. So the majority are betting that a mix of traditional open post-publication and collaborative peer review will be part of our future. Yeah, so thank you so much for those responses. It is great to see how divided we are right now. I mean, even if it's a great amount of, still think it's going to be a mix. A good amount of people are still batting on the traditional peer review. So I wanted to for us to dive into how is technology reshaping peer review. We've seen a great a technological advance in the past year that came with LLMs that is revolutionizing the way we do almost everything in our lives, even at cooking, right? Right now, people even go to ChatGPT to check how to prepare a dish or something. So in peer review, it wouldn't be different. And from yeah, so and before we dive into this discussion, we have again another quick poll, and I would like to start asking the audience if they believe that AI tools will improve the quality of peer review. And the options, yes, they will help reviewers and editors. Somewhat useful for initial checks, but not real reviewing. No, peer review should be human-driven only. And unsure, they haven't used any AI tools yet. I doubt someone will click on that. So let's give people a few seconds to work on their responses. And I can see so far that we are divided between somewhat useful for initial checks, but not real reviewing. And yes, they will help reviewers and editors. So there is potential in these AI tools in improving or changing the way we will peer review in the future. And then no, peer review should be human driven only with 7%, and unsure, haven't used AI tools yet, 4%. So yes, and then going to this, Garrett, have you personally seen AI tools like plagiarism checkers or tools that assess quality being integrated into editorial workflows? And do you think they really improve? Do they really help? Or are they just complicating the process for editors and reviewers?
Oh, well, you said it yourself, Teresa. Like, things have changed completely, like over the last less than a year. I mean, and yes would be my answers to those questions. I mean, for a long time, we've seen various kinds of plagiarism checking tools, pre-flight checking software and tools, as they're called in the industry, like checking papers that get submitted into the editorial office, into that first part of the workflow. But now we have AI powered, LLM powered peer review opportunities as well, up to and including tools that completely automate the peer review process. I won't name all of the different tools here, but there's something like 16, 17, 18 like startups or companies or publishers. Many publishers have their own AI driven parts of their workflow peer review tools. So I mean, yeah, like it's completely changed, or everything in terms of workflows, made everything much more efficient. But like, because of what we saw in the poll that you launched like a moment ago, both editors, journal managers, and researchers and peer reviewers very much are of the opinion that even though AI is speeding up the process, AI is helping us to automate the process, there should be that human expert step before the paper passes finally into acceptance and into production. So that remains like the rate determining step in the process. Finding those experts to do that final stage of checking is still an issue. And I think publishers have a lot more work to do helping their peer reviewers take advantage of all of the tools that are available. And we see a huge variety of different guidelines. Different publishers have different rules, different guidelines for authors and also for peer reviewers. There's no any yet like unified kind of industry-wide agreed kind of like status for any of this stuff. So yeah, it's an exciting time, especially if you don't speak English as your first language. Now it's much easier to do lots and lots of things.
Yeah. And Lutz, do you agree that it can be a supplement to the human peer review? Do you feel that AI can be used reliably in
Absolutely.
assisting
I think
peer reviewers?
so. When I think of the situation of an editor having to make a decision, it's probably nice, no matter whether you gather 2 reviews or 3 of human reviewers, to have an additional opinion by an AI that has a certain constancy in the way it looks at stuff, which over time you can learn about and then can probably cross-check whether the reviews have, for instance, missed some important part, some important aspect of the paper. As a reviewer myself, I would be happy, for instance, to have a reading helper that has read the paper that I can ask, are they commenting anywhere whether they do X or how they do X? Because I can't find it. Yeah. Maybe I'm skimming the paper, or maybe I've read it, but it was too complicated and my brain is overflowing, or whatever. And the AI could point out, yes, I think this paragraph is where it happens, and I can read it again. That would be an immense help. It's a very local, I think it's a low risk kind of thing, because understanding what is the topic in various parts of the text is probably not too difficult for the AI to get right.
Okay, so you feel that it would also help you to be able to deliver your comments in a faster manner as well, as it would
Yeah, or
be
more
assisting
reliable.
you throughout the process, more
Yeah.
reliable. Okay,
So
okay.
today I may decide it isn't discussed anywhere, but in fact I have overlooked the spot where it is.
Mm. And are you both somehow already using the tool in your day to day, or waiting
I'm,
for those things to appear integrated into the manuscript management systems out there?
I'm not.
Oh, I'm the opposite. I'm using them all the time. So yeah, especially tools like ChatGPT and DeepSeek. I'm a huge fan of the DeepSeek, Chinese DeepSeek AI. Yeah, but I think yeah, especially providing reviewers with the opportunity to get summaries of papers, maybe in their native language, can be a huge help for them to
Mhm.
get into the peer review. I mean, talking, for example, with researchers in China a lot, like they often, these colleagues very often would like to do more peer review, but they feel that they often are at a disadvantage because of language problems. So that's a way, like a kind of low hanging fruit, if you like to use the kind of business phraseology, that
Mhm.
publishers can help augment your peer review pool by providing non-native speaking potential peer reviewers with help that can be provided with AI tools of various kinds.
So thank you both so much for sharing your point of views into how technology will be reshaping peer review. And I wanted us to change the subject a little bit and talk about preprints. Preprints are there available to us since a while now, and I wanted to explore um, how this been growing, and then when during the pandemic we saw like a boost in the number of preprints out there, and it does and it is indeed a publishing model, let's say publishing, uh, that is much faster, right? And then helps putting things out there in a much faster way. And then I wanted to ask, maybe we could start with Lutz this time. What do you think preprints are reshaping? If preprints are reshaping how researchers think about the role and value of peer review?
I'm not seeing that. So, in my perspective, peer review is about making work visible earlier, which sometimes is just a nice thing and sometimes is important. So, I think we saw it in the COVID pandemic that it was important to see results before they had gone through that lengthy process. It was interesting for the public at large and also for the researchers. In my own field, people have started doing lots and lots of things with LLMs when they were new. And I'm aware of a systematic literature review that looked at 200 some works, only 30 of which had properly appeared. And the 170 others were all preprints. So you can do things and see things much earlier. And sometimes for some kinds of research, that's very interesting and relevant. But I don't see that it's changing the general shape of how people work or how people view publications and their role for research or for their personal career.
Yeah, I agree 100% with Lutz. There's a very interesting article in today's Scholarly Kitchen, which I see we stuck in the chat. But yeah, like I worked for a couple of years with Research Square, which is still the world's largest preprint platform. And in theory, like preprinting is a great thing for open science and open research. But you know what? Like I agree with some of the points in this Scholarly Kitchen article. Number one of those being that if you preprint something, very, very few people comment on it and participate in open peer review. So you can put your preprint onto bioRxiv or medRxiv or Research Square and give people the opportunity, because it's been pre-printed, they have the opportunity to comment on it, but almost nobody does. And we know that from Research Square, by the way, like very, very few people actually participated in any form of open peer review on that platform.
There is a journal that started in 1997. It was a very early electronic journal. They were all electronic from the start, and they had a comment on this article function from day one. And it's a desert. Nothing is happening there. So it's a nice idea, this post-publication peer review, but it would require that people have an interest in doing that. And I think that's a very specialized thing.
Yeah, so that
In
tells
my
you.
opinion, sorry.
Oh no, I was just going to say that tells you that open peer review, although people think it's a great idea, like if given the opportunity, like very, very few researchers actually engage with it. Sorry, Teresa.
That was exactly what I wanted to say. This is like proof that while the concept of open peer review or collaborative review it's great and could indeed bring a lot of improvement into the process, and it could not only enrich how things are done but also bring recognition. People still have a foot back, right? Like they don't feel secure that this isn't going to backlash on them, so they hold on their ideas just because they would be disseminated more openly. I'm conscious about the time, and there are a few other topics that we wanted to discuss with you today, to take the opportunity that you are both available to us. And we look into how technology, especially AI, is starting to reshape the peer review landscape. And as we talk about how these things could improve, it's how we peer review. It's also important that not every researcher on the planet experience peer review in the same way. And for many, especially those in their early career and from underrepresented regions, I say underrepresented on the journal boards. We know that there is a predominant number of people from the global north representing journals everywhere, and also of people who are not English native speakers, as English is the language, the published language. Peer review can feel like a barrier. And you, Garrett, you mentioned that Chinese researchers would like to peer review more, but that they don't feel that they can, right? So and maybe we can start with you, Garrett, as you already shared this bit of information of your network, and as you have worked closely with many researchers from non-native English backgrounds and not very well represented regions. What are some of the major barriers that these researchers are facing in the peer review process? And then if you would have some tips for journals out there to better support this share of the research community.
Well, I mean, let me just say first of all that my experience, like, it's anecdotal, right? So I mean, I talk to researchers, but I wouldn't like to, generalize. But yeah, it's definitely a thing that a lot of the people that we talk to, a lot of the researchers that we talk to, would definitely feel that peer review is part of their community service, like something that they want to do and that they feel that they should be doing within their research community, and that's what I'd like to emphasize, and that's what we do try to emphasize to publishers, actually, that this for researchers is a community endeavor. And so if there were more journal networks like we see in fields like neuroscience, for example, where journals from all different publishers have accumulated themselves together and provided a system whereby peer review from one journal can be passed to another journal independent of publishers, I think that would be one of the best ways to stimulate, engage, and bring peer reviewers together. Because at the moment, most publishers cascade within their own systems and are deeply nervous and deeply paranoid often about allowing peer reviewers from their peer review pool to leave that ecosystem. And they miss the point, because researchers don't see publishers as entities in that way. They look at journals and they don't necessarily care so much about who the publishers are. They look at journals within a field, within a research area. So one way to stimulate immediately, like much more peer review activity across disciplines, would simply be to break down the barriers between publishers and say, hey, like in, I don't know, computer science or paleontology, here are all the journals. Let's work together and share peer reviews amongst ourselves, as happens. The best example that I know of is neuroscience, but there may be many others.
Yeah. We at Karger, we fully embrace this idea, and several of our neuroscience and neurology related journals are part of the NPRC. So yeah, if you were trying to publish with the NPRC journal, and for any reason you would need to transfer that to any of our Karger journals, just know that this is already part of what we offer for these publications. But Lutz, would you like to contribute to this topic? Is there anything
Yeah,
that
my
you would complement?
perspective. So the thing that so my first question is this a question from the reviewer perspective or from the author perspective? To me, it looks like from the author perspective. And there I would say, well, double blind, I personally don't like it, neither as an author nor as a reviewer, but I see the point. Yeah, it makes sense that some people say, I'd rather not have my name and affiliation on this. I think it would negatively bias some peer reviewers. And that's perfectly fine. And you asked for advice. I would say if you go to a journal that doesn't do double blind reviewing, ask them to make an exception for you. Ask them, do I need to have my name on it, or is it okay if I don't? And my guess would be that most say, yeah, okay, if you don't think you want to, then don't. So you can, I think, get double blind sometimes where it's not posted, where it's not the norm, and that may be helpful. Other than that, I don't know if we can do much about this, because if it's human bias, it's really hard to get rid of.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that. What I'm sorry, I'm a little bit less lost when you brought the double blind aspect of it and questioning it. But in these consortia, peer review consortia, when the peer review reports are transferred, they are not shared with the authors. The whole reporting, they go from journal to journal, and if it's still double blind, they remain double blind, right? So you would not be infringing any anonymity principle that you would have had in the original journal. When you would transfer to the next, it remains the same. So it's just a way to allow not losing the peer review resources that was used priorly. Yeah. Okay, we have another poll that we wanted to check with the audience. How would you rate the current inclusiveness of peer review in your field? I think yes. So if you could just quickly share with us if you feel that it is fair and inclusive, or it's improving but still biased, not inclusive enough, or I am not sure, I've not thought about it. So I'm conscious of the time, so let's just try to go through quickly of this. So the majority of people feel it is improving. Then followed by not sure, never thought about it, or not inclusive enough. And it is fair and inclusive coming at last. So a majority of the audience feels that there is room for improving or haven't thought about this. So thank you so much for sharing your perspective on equity and inclusion in peer review. And before we move into our final section focused on practical advices for researchers, we would like to hear from the audience one last time. So, and here you could choose all questions that apply. We have a last poll. What is your biggest concern about becoming a peer reviewer? And you can choose more than once. Is not knowing how to write a good review, not feeling qualified enough, lack of time or incentives, or I feel confident and ready to review. So let's give people a few seconds. Yeah. So I think that the results are very aligned with what you started sharing with us, Garrett. It was indeed the lack of time or incentives, so the community feels that they do not have either the time or they are not being allocated enough recognition or rewards for participating in this activity. And then I wanted to ask both of you, maybe Garrett, what practical advice would you give to early career researchers who are considering becoming peer reviewers so that they can finally start in this activity?
Mine would be
That,
short. Don't be afraid to say, I don't know. I think many bad reviews would be quite a bit better if people would simply spare out those parts where they don't know enough and don't comment on them, or rather better say, well, here, I can't judge this. I don't know enough. It's fine. It's not your responsibility to be competent. It's the editors. And they need to work with what you give them, but you need to be transparent. So if you can't judge something, say, I can't judge that, and comment on the rest. That's fine.
yeah, we get this question a lot, and really we would encourage like early career researchers to reach out to journal editors, like get in touch with journal editors in your field. Like many publishers have fantastic programs to encourage early career researchers to get involved with peer review. They're crying out for peer reviewers, journals and publishers. So I would just get in touch with a journal editor that you like in your field and ask them if there are opportunities for peer review, and they'll give you lots of resources. Like the Karger have also like resources for training peer reviewers. So you can get training, get accreditation, get access to experts, and it's a great way of networking too. I mean, you can get in touch with editors. Now you've got an editor in your network, which is great.
Yeah, we are out of the time, but we do have one question from the audience, and I think it's very in line with what you just said, Garrett. So we have Milorad, and I really can't pronounce his surname. He says, great topic, thank you very much. What do you think about offering reviewers a coupon, as some publishers do, which could be used to cover article processing charges? Do you feel this is very widely practiced? Do you feel this is indeed is something that is valued by the reviewer community? Do publishers get it right when they send out a discount, or you feel something else should be it's more appropriate?
Want me to go? Yeah, I mean, I think it's widely done, and what the survey work that we've done shows that that's not really what reviewers would appreciate most of all. And money is also like not top of the list, by the way. But these APC tokens keep reviewers within that publisher's network. So if I get an APC token from Karger, for example, that's great, but I'm only going to be able to use it if I publish my next paper with that publisher. So maybe there's a more universal way to reward publishers, reward reviewers, like reviewer credits, for example.
Okay, thank you. Lutz, do you have a take on this?
No,
When
I
you
don't have
review
anything to add.
papers,
Yeah, it's
do
a
you
bit of a bribe. So no, I don't usually get anything. So the conference work is particularly nice. There was the top conference in my field at a time. It's better now. They gave you 20 10-page papers to review within 6 weeks. Brutal. And all you get is you were on their program committee list. But that's fine.
Okay. Well, there is some recognition in that, right? Like you're prominently displayed somewhere, so maybe that feels okay. So, as we are over time, I wanted really to thank you both for participating in this webinar. And then I just wanted to mention a few things from Karger side. So just wanted to point out to everyone that we have free access to our peer review courses to everybody who attended. You just need to scan the QR code and you will have access to great resources within Karger. This is open for everyone until the 17th of May. So rush. I also wanted to invite everyone to visit our researcher community, which is packed with resources, both for reviewers but also to authors and editors at Karger. So this is the link to our site, and also, I wanted to invite everyone who is attending, if you are an early career researcher and you haven't had yet the opportunity to peer review and you would like to try that, we do have a program for self-nomination. So you can apply to become a reviewer for Karger Journal. You have to fill up a form. This is going to be evaluated by our in-house team and also our editors. And then if they feel that your profile is suitable, you are then added to the reviewer pool of the journals, and then you are then searchable via our manuscript manager tools. So we do recognize that very often people invite people that they know, and then this is giving the opportunity for people to just put their hands up and say, yes, I'm willing to try this on. Yes. So thank you so much again. And then, yeah, Fran, is there anything from your side?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Teresa. Thank you to our speakers. Thanks for everybody who attended today. You've been great. Thanks for answering our polls and for the comments and the questions in the chat. If we didn't get to your question, don't worry, we'll reply. We'll probably write a blog about it so that you can catch up with the answers that we didn't manage to give you live. Also, for whomever wants the link to the free resources, don't worry, everything will be in the follow-up email you will be receiving after the event. You receive an email today and then one with the recording. So do not worry. You just need to create a MyKarger account, which is free, absolutely. And then you can follow the link and access the 3 courses for peer reviewers.